Hey, good morning, everybody. Hold on, technical issues here. I'm still playing with some new equipment I have. What the fuck is going on in the um, I don't know. I recorded a video that was supposed to premiere later. I forgot the camera's on the side of this contraption. Was supposed to premiere this morning, and then I watched part of it, and I was like, if I don't give someone context, I'm going to confuse the hell out of everybody, and that's not going to make any sense. So I figured I'll do a live this morning, even if it's a short one, just to go in. Hello, Alpine, Rapture Ready, Ola, Tony, what's going on? Carbon Q, how are you doing? Hey, Coffee. Wait, and I lost my glasses again. They're somewhere in my office. Hey, Cold War, how you doing, Lee? It's good to see you. Alexandra. By the way, y'all have to watch Alexandra's shorts. The short video she's made, not her shorts. God, that came out wrong. The short video she's making, um, because apparently she's causing all sorts of hell with her school district for their stupidity. And she got called a Karen. Then I got called a Karen because I commented for someone else. So I don't know. I've never met what's a Karen in Spanish? There's not even a name for that. Juanita, I don't know. Shit. But anyway, yeah, you got to watch it. Oh, video down, sorry. Let's see. Hey, Joe, good morning. Um, let's see. Did I miss anyone out there? Oh, you guys took off on me. Hey, good morning, Mimi. Carol Ann, hello, hello. I watched my shorts. Yeah, that kid was absolutely bad. Um, Pendeja is Karen in Spanish. Yeah, pendeja would be a Karen in Spanish. So I actually, when I recorded that other video, which was supposed to premiere this morning, I watched part of it and I'm like, it's kind of dark, but it's important to understand what's going on. And so I wanted to give it some context. Um, you guys know I have colleagues. Yeah, no, definitely. We will definitely stand behind her. Yes, yeah, we'll put her link up. I don't know if I can do it on this goofy iPad. What I'll do, I'll share her channel on my community page if Ahmad doesn't sneak in on us. Unsub me from another channel. Okay, see, that's not just me, because I will gain a bunch of subs and then they leak off in like 3 days. But then people start visiting and then they all pop back up. And I'm like, what is going on with the algorithm since the beginning of the year? Um, it's uh, been really weird to behold. Something changed in December, January, and I'm not the only one who's having this issue. I know that. Um, so what started this in Lee, I know Lee and a few of you guys who grew up during the Cold War, even though I'm Gen X, I grew up at the tail end of the Cold War. Um, remember the movie The Day After, right? So I'd rewatched that a while ago, and then I found another one called Threads, and it's a British movie. It's like an independent movie. I'm about halfway through because work kept calling me. And that movie, you can find it on YouTube actually, and I might do a watch party at some point. It's happening to everybody's channel. Okay, yeah. And I don't know if they're cleaning out like bots or something and they're taking subs with it or what they're doing. But it's been weird because I would average in any given month like 40, 50 new subs for the last year. And now I'm two or I'm minus one. And it's been really strange to behold. Hey, Redleg, how you doing, man? Um, but this movie, uh, it's much like the day after. If you haven't watched either of them, definitely start with the day after because it's a little more cinematic. You'll recognize a lot of actors when they were young that we now know is like more experienced actors and actresses. But I watched that and I'm like, man, this was back in the 80s this both movies were made. One was 84, one was made in 85. Red Dawn came out, I think, in 84, 85. It was all in that same time period where, World War III was actually a possibility. And a lot of people haven't seen that. Like my kids hadn't seen it. My daughter's going to go and watch one later this weekend. But it absolutely brought back a lot of the things I used to hear and see when I was younger about that time. And like Lee, Redleg, you guys were Cold War soldiers, so you know what was going on then. Um, what it got me thinking was I was listening. They did a really good job in both movies of going into the people and also the politics, not between the countries, but within the countries. Um, and as I'm watching Threads, I'm like, holy cow. So it both start with a small conflict that expands, but the language being told to each country during the movie, they're saying, well, no need to worry, but we're going to, prepare bomb shelters. This was the one from England. And don't be alarmed, but you may see civil defense and all of a sudden it's freaking army rolling through the town, and the language, they're trying to get people prepared, but what they're saying, the urgency of what they're saying and what's actually happening don't match. And I'm looking at what's happening now, and there's a very big disconnect because even in the movies back then, they're like, have 2 weeks of food, make sure you have water, and prepare a small place to protect yourself in your basement. And we're not hearing anything like that, but the Russian people are. So probably not. We probably should never have done that. Okay, so some of you have seen Threads. I'm about halfway through, and I do love The Day After. I think Threads, because it was an independent movie, it wasn't as fancy, if you will, but they did go into individuals. So they're different little families that you follow through this event. Some are politicians, one's a cop. Um, yeah. So, Joe, to that, a lot of states have reinstated the State Defense Force or State Guard. So Texas probably has the biggest one. And I think when I left, when I hung up my uniform, State Guard was about 3,000 volunteers who basically were civil defense, but we had to do the background checks. We were in uniform and we were assigned to specific National Guard depots to backfill them if they left. So thank you, Alpine. I appreciate that. So hypothetically, if our National Guard unit here in West Texas had to go to Dallas, they could call the local State Guard, the volunteers. We'd answer to the governor. We don't answer to the president. And about half, maybe a third to half, were former military or responders. The rest were civilians that they trained for very specific jobs. We'd show up at the armory. And then they'd give us, say, okay, since you're local, you guys will do food distribution, you will direct traffic, you will go and help process people at the hospital. And it was extra manpower that was trained. So yeah, the end of civil defense or something like it. So FEMA was supposed to replace it, but to most of us, civil defense reached into the community. Civil defense is this thing that happens somewhere else, and they show up, and there's a big disconnect. But what I was noticing in Threads, and I'm glad a few of you have watched it, the language, even in the movie, where they weren't trying to create panic. It was a British movie, right? So we shall remain calm and all that stuff. But the language was make ready, have some food, make a shelter, know where your shelter is if you can't find a shelter. They were giving practical advice for people to be aware. Russia's hearing that right now. For those of you who didn't see it, it wasn't Tim Pool. Tim Pool kind of agitates me at times. Guys, I cannot remember where I saw it, but somebody shared the actual video from one of the Russian talk shows. And they had, how we'd have like We'd bring up back in the day Colin Powell, or we'd bring up what's his name, Mamili, and he'd make commentary on what's going on. Where the Wind Blows, old British cartoon. Oh, I'm gonna have to check that out. And actually, Alexandra, you can, because it's on. If it's, I didn't even know it was on Netflix. I found it on YouTube. You can watch it and pause it, and then come back to it when you have time. It will probably, the first half may freak your kiddo out. The beginning, no, because it's just people setting the plot. But when things happen, um, it's not graphic, but it's very dark. And so, yeah, that might be a 10-year-old or 9-year-old and over type of movie, just because it'll scare him. He may not. He might find it like, whoa, cool, if he was like one of my boys. Hey, Art Klingon, Brett, what's going on? Hello, good morning, good morning. So, going back to Threads, the language the British government was telling the people was preparatory, not scary, because they're Brits, but preparatory. In Red Dawn, right, you heard the radio cast, and then there was the sneak attack. Um, but in most of the movies, there's like some kind of warning, and the Russian and Chinese governments have that language right now. We don't. No, no, we're just going to send tanks to Ukraine. I get the feeling either they don't and tell me if I'm wrong, guys. Either our leaders don't understand or don't want to say what's happening. But if you look at it, it seems like something is not being told to us that's being told to our compatriots overseas and to the other country. A Quiet Place, and that's kind of a dark movie. Yeah, The Road is a very dark movie as well. And hypothetically, if you took like The Day After or the Threads, The Road could be a after movie because it would fit. You never really know what happened on the road that happened in the other two. So they never tell you, was it a meteor, asteroid, nuclear war, but any of the above could have led to a scenario like that character went through. Yeah, and what's the name of the actor in The Road? Didn't he play in Lord of the Rings? He played the king. I can't remember his name. I just blanked out. You know who I'm talking about, though. Um, I have not watched The Postman or Waterworld. Um, I did rewatch Mad Max the other day when Mel Gibson was young and did Not Crazy, and that was fun. Actually, the original Mad Max was very dark too. That was another indie movie. Oh yeah. Good morning, Rigo. Oh yeah, it's Rigo Morgan McMuffin something. Yeah. I think I. Well, Mimi, that's the point. What the hell are we talking about on the news? Look, I understand if someone wants to dress a different gender and run around dressed strange, that's fine. We're so fixated. There was a poll done on two different news channels, and the trans community represents less than 2% of the US population. The Black community is about 14, the Hispanic or Latin community is about 27 to 30, depending on, because there's a lot of intermarriage. So it's like, well, if your mom's Puerto Rican, but your dad's like white, are you Latino or are you white or are you both? But Viggo Mortensen, thank you. The Postman. Oh, he has an old coat. Okay, I'm gonna have to check it out. Did you know? Little duck. Actually, it's funny because my son-in-law, my future son-in-law's family got run out of the USSR. So he grew up with his grandparents. He speaks fluent Russian. Um, but because of his work, he doesn't want to jump on social media too much. And so I'm trying to get, by the way, Bentley and Peppermint are in dog jail. They got in a fight over someone else's bowl and it got ugly and I had to pull them apart. So they're busted. That's why you don't have critters. Um, I love the postmat. Yeah. Oh, see, now you got Alexandra all excited. See, I speak no pierogies. That's the extent of it. I had my sister's ex-husband was Polish. I loved her family. We always ate a lot. Didn't like him, but it is what it is. That's why he's the ex-husband now. Yeah. We can't. Well, see, and that's what's funny. We're so worried about these little labels. Suburban, you're absolutely right. But you have these big populations that have concerns. They're focusing on this very small percentage, which, okay, everyone should be recognized. But there's a freaking war in Europe. So going back to the language between the countries, you know how uh, we keep hearing, oh, Russian tanks are being destroyed, they're being destroyed. And they say like 2,000, 3,000 tanks. Well, I looked at a think tank report the other day, and they're saying Ukraine lost about as many, if not more. The difference being Russia's population is 240 million, something like that. Ukraine is 70. They have much more resources, more factories. They have friendships and a big border with China. North Korea and China and Iran can send them stuff. So Russia's not by themselves. There is a federation over there that nobody's talking about. It's just clandestine. But in a war of attrition, Russia will win. Why now, after a year and change, are we sending tanks, heavy tanks? Why did HIMARS show up a month ago? Why are Bradleys and the Swedish CV90s, which is basically a little Bradley type vehicle, specifically designed for snow, um, a special operation? Well, what's funny, Russia now calls it a war, and I think I know why the change. So they went after Kiev, Chernobyl. Remember, they hit like four very specific spots. The attack failed and they fell back. Everyone's under the impression, oh, Russia just took a beating. Russia was trying to decapitate Ukraine, the leadership, take the leaders out. That's why they didn't hit the infrastructure, because they were hoping to take the country intact. That didn't happen. They got a nasty surprise and they did take a beating. So what did they do? They fell back. Holding Chernobyl made no value to them. Holding certain areas was not strategic. If you didn't get Kiev, it was pointless. So they didn't get Kiev, they backed away. They consolidated in an area that they know and they've been fighting in for years, even though they've denied it. Um, but when did Russia start this war? When they invaded, what time of year was it? Right now. It was what? January, February? I believe it was February when they launched their attack. Well, either that or they're completely stupid and they think they're actually going to win a war of attrition with Russia, which they won't. Then not only will they supply Russia, but they're taking a lot of the surplus that would normally go to National Guard units or emerge or to replace battlefield losses. And Lee and Texas Red Leg can probably speak to that. Hey, Mad Dogs. Well, yeah, and that's my point. Like there's a bigger picture going on there, Red. And to your point, we don't know what's happening. We're getting bits and pieces. I'm sure everyone's getting bits and pieces. Right. And so this goes back a ways, right? Because the NATO wasn't supposed to go past Poland, I think. And now we've got the Baltics, we've got Romania, we've got, we got right up on their business and they didn't like that. This is part of what resulted from it. So, uh, right, the multiple launch rocket system. Did I say that right, Mad Dog? Yeah, and I owe you an email. I haven't been able to get a hold of the guys we were talking about. They were out in the field, so once I get a hold of them, I have an answer to your previous question. But Joe just made a bad joke somewhere. Oh yeah, Paul Pelosi wanted a hot dog. But we're not hearing the language, right? We're being distracted with sparkle sops up north and this guy who his wife has to interrupt the reporters because our president doesn't know what he's talking about. Oh, I'm just everyday president and I secured my important paperwork next to my very expensive car that most of you on TV can't afford. We're so distracted with this stupidity. But let's break it down. Look at the time of year Russia picked this fight. It was this time of year. The lakes, rivers, and the ground, the farmlands, which are extensive there, are all frozen. You can move tracks, you can move wheeled, you can move a lot of heavy equipment over that. You could go across the damn rivers in some places with tanks, just roll them right across. That changes the dynamic of how the Russians can fight. Also, remember, they made a big push for enlistment. You remember they had a draft? Does anyone remember when that draft was? It was back in June. Now, those of you who served, basic or AIT, depending on the branch, I'm sorry, basic is anywhere from 8 to 10 weeks, depending on whether you're Marine Corps, Army, Navy, Air Force. So 8 to 10 weeks. So let's call it roughly 2 months basic. Then advanced infantry. If you're going to be in 11 Bravo, 31 Bravo, my son was in 11 Bravos were 3 months. My son was in 3.5, 4. So roughly 4 to 6 months, you have a fully trained, operational, combat ready soldier in whatever specialty they're in, with a few exceptions. Russia did their big draft. Remember, everyone was freaking out trying to leave the country in June. They made that draft announcement then because they knew they weren't going to attack. They can't attack. Their frontline units took a beating. They backed up, consolidated. You notice Ukraine has not gained any ground. Those 300,000 guys Russia supposedly recruited are done with basic. They're done with AIT. They're getting their equipment now. And if you don't think China and Iran are throwing goodies over the border, yeah, they are. They'll be ready for the fight in February. And that's what I think the problem is we're not being told what's happening. Yeah, see, so that's right. So if you have an OSIT, one station unit training like the MPs do, so Fort Benning, you would do basic and AIT all in one facility. Same with Leonard Wood, which is for the MPs and engineers. But if you in like Marines, they'll go to basic, then they that rolls in their riflery, but then they go into a specialty school depending on what they're doing. And again, it varies. Hey, Shorty, good morning. Hey, my mother's Spark. Ola, how are you? I think I missed a few folks. If I missed you, I apologize. Oh, I did not know that you. So the rumors of your death were greatly exaggerated? I had no idea. Oh, no worry, fed up. That's kind of funny. It's coffee morning on mine. Anyway, but in any case, point being, they did those recruiting, they did that enlistment, all that training in June, May, June, July. Those soldiers, for the most part, will be ready for combat by now, plus whatever equipment they've had. And Russia was making tanks and rifles out the ass for years. Hell, they were selling us their surplus AKs and the Nagants. So I'm pretty sure they have guns everywhere. But right, tanks take a little longer. But 6 months, 6 months. Yeah, no kidding. Uh, oh, long day. Yeah, we were late with clients and whatnot last night too. Everyone's home. Yeah, and I'll tell you what, Red, it's been difficult keep any kind of schedule just because, work. I mean, heck, the deal. We've spoken before. It's really difficult to do. But what we are seeing right now we're sending the heavy tanks. Now the HIMARS, the MLRS, as Mad Dog pointed out, all these systems are now either in Ukraine or headed there. Why now? It's because somebody knows that something's going to happen. You wouldn't just amp up because the prevailing discussion is do not invade Russia, defend your territory and stop. A tank is a purely offensive weapon. If you just want to beat someone out of your country, artillery and HIMARS are more than sufficient. Hey, Just Josh, good morning, sir. Thank you for joining me. But we're sending it now, or we've been sending it. So you figured by February, hopefully experienced tankers will have transitioned for the Leopards. The MLRS guys, HIMARS, as Mad Dog said, it takes a while. Hey, it takes a while to train them. So if they got the HIMARS, like October, November, let's assuming logistics and all, they show up, bling, here's your HIMARS, October, November, December, you got 2 months to train a crew, maybe 3 if you include January. For what? Why are those tanks showing up now? Why is there talk of F-16s, which are a great defensive fighter plane, showing up now? Somebody knows something. What we're hearing in the media and what I'm observing does not match. And if you listen to Russian media, if you can get your hands on any of it, or Chinese media, China has been telling its people, we may have to retake Taiwan, not remerge, not vote them in, retake them. Russia's been doing the same. I just think something true. Now, Josh, interesting thing. In my undergrad, which was a long time ago, we were actually playing with hypersonic concepts. This was in the mid 90s. So yeah, we've got toys and they've got toys, but that concerns me. What concerns me is who's already in the country that can do damage that we don't know about, right? Like fifth column. And that, although that's dangerous, it could be a distraction, right? Because they kind of threw it out there and everyone's looking at it. So it's not a surprise. So what else are they doing that we're not seeing? We're the damn subs. The subs can do a bunch of damage with they have like a Tomahawk variant. Hey, Cat Lady, good morning. Red, that's a very good question. But yeah, Josh, to that point, having that close is now going to take assets. Right now, the Coast Guard or the Navy is going to have to watch that. So while our frigates are watching that damn thing, who's sneaking through? You see what I'm saying? I think there's so many layers to this, but why now? Why are they dumping everything, this really heavy equipment in now? It's because they're expecting a fight. So let's history lesson. World War II. Those of you who read World War II books in high school, I hope they still teach it. Battle for Stalingrad. Stalin, Hitler. They didn't like each other from the beginning. They hated each other. Fighting over a city called Stalingrad. Technically, it had no strategic value. It was an ego thing between these two idiots. Hitler wanted to take Stalin's city. Instead of turning and taking the oil fields in Azerbaijan, what's now Azerbaijan, and cutting off Russia, he grinded his Western units into a nub fighting Russians who just poured how many fatalities did Russia have in their front? 15, 20 million people? They were just throwing soldiers in there until they ran the Germans over. Their counteroffensive, February. So World War II started 1938-39, depending on whether you say the invasion of Poland was the starting point or their taking of the Sudetenland was the starting point. But either way, so call it 1938 for giggles, 38, 39, 40, 41, 42, 43, 44, 45. Russia was fighting them for 7, 8 years. Let's go back further. Napoleon also attacked Russia, got his butt beat. When? In the winter. 6-year war, if I recall correctly. It was longer, but Napoleon was fighting elsewhere. Then he went after Russia. Let's go back even further, the Great Northern War. And I'll cover this more in the other video. The Kingdom of Sweden actually had at one point taken over Sweden, Denmark, Finland, and the Netherlands, some of the English small isles. Like it became a Viking kingdom. They got into it with Russia too. From 1700 to 1721, a 21-year war. Russia won. Russia and her allies, which were England at the time, ironically, won. Russia gets into these fights knowing it's going to be 5, 6, 7, 8 years. Do you think Ukraine can last 5 years, 6 years of this? Now that Russia's targeting the infrastructure? Can we provide support? Let's say it doesn't leave that area. Can we provide support for 6, 7, 8 years? Yes. Mad Dog, that you bring up another great point. A lot of our surplus stuff that we're supposedly sending, oh, it's surplus. This is also meant to replace battlefield losses, right? So, Mad Dog will relate. So, they call a bunch of us back, a bunch of us up, and we go out and we do battle, and they break our ship. They tore up my Bradley, and Mad Dog's MLRS gets, the side knocked off. Okay, now it's battlefield junk. We take what we can, we torch the rest, we run away. So we come back. In the past, they would say, okay, here's this older version of what you had, but it works. Here you go back to fight. How are we going to do that now? And they keep saying America is buying more equipment, but America's buying more equipment, but how long will that take to be made? Right now, our ability to replace battlefield losses is gone, or it's diminished greatly. And as Mad Dog says, okay, and yeah, Mad Dog has served very recently. Hey, Vision, what's going on? And that's my concern, Fed Up. That concerns the hell out of me, because and that's where I'm going with this whole thing, is the language the Russian government and the Russian media and the Russian celebrities are telling their people. We're hearing, oh, the Russians are rioting. I'm sure they are. We're rioting here right now. And we're an open society, so everyone sees what we're doing. We got riots in Atlanta, riots in California, riots in New York. The Angry Prepper just posted a video of or a clip of a night of rage, and we're going to burn down NYPD stations. And he just put it out there, says, hey, FYI, we might have trouble. Not to scare people, just to make you aware. But you think about it, we start putting this heavy equipment. At what point is Russia going to say, you know what, you're getting our guys killed with your tanks. We're going to go into Poland and attack the staging area, so you'll stop your shit. Poland and Russia don't get along very well. They've historically not played nice. Okay, Poland will fight back, and they'll go and punch Russia. And then what? Poland's a NATO member. You can't, you could turn your back to Ukraine. You can't turn your back to a NATO member. Otherwise, what good is NATO? And that's where I'm afraid. But to be fair, Poland doesn't want German tanks going through their country into Russia, because they've had German and Russian tanks in their country in the past. And the Polish paid for that. A lot of people died and suffered. So, yeah. Well, and Jimmy, that goes to the greater question here. Sorry, I lost. Somebody asked me a question and I lost it. I'm trying to. Okay, I lost my train of thought. But yeah, Jimmy, to your point, then what? And at what point is Russia going to say, you know what, they're even saying it on the media. They're saying by introducing offensive weapons, Abrams and Leopards, to Ukraine via Poland, they've indirectly indicted Poland, Germany, the UK, and the US. At what point will it tip over? And that's what concerns me. World War I, a lot of overlapping and intermingled alliances. One regional conflict blew up the world as we knew it. And I mean, this went from Africa across the northern hemisphere. There were even gunboat fights down in South America. There was fighting in Africa. It was everywhere, y'all. How hard would it be for that to happen again? And if we're tangled up with the bear, you have the dragon in the other ocean. Well, we have the assets to fight them as well if they decide to retake the biggest semiconductor facility in the world, Taiwan. This is what concerns me. This is the language we're being told here. We're being distracted by, died suddenly, and granted, people killing over is not cool, but my rights, and this guy wants to use the wrong bathroom, and this person's doing it, and it's all Tinkerbells and bullshit. I don't know if that's a good way to put it. It's Tinkerbells and bullshit. And we're not seeing the fact that we have sunk so much surplus overseas. How do we replace our battlefield losses if something pops off? And Mad Dog pointed it out earlier. Mad Dog was in that garbage. Oh, hold on. Somebody asked another question here. Exactly. And if people are not, I don't have much left in Poland. And Joe Morgan wants to tell you, there's like Pinky in the brain there, Joe. You're going to take over the world. That's awesome, actually. I may have misread that, but that's funny. That's what I'm getting from it is Joe is Pinky, or Joe's the brain. You need a Pinky now, man. This is not wrong. But look at the youth we have in a lot of places. Of course, my fridge seems to be dying. You look at, the kids in the country, or the inner city kids are tough as shit. The country kids are tough as shit. But you have the suburban kids who are crying because they had a 6-hour shift at Starbucks. We pop off a war between NATO and someone else. You can't go to Canada. If you go to Mexico, you'll get arrested and sent back to the US. We're going to put these kids in a battlefield. Maybe I'm judging harshly, but I go to the street, I look, and they're little kids with like that iPad that has gummy protection around it, and their headset, and they're like, da, 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 and they're freaking watching whatever the hell cartoon, oblivious to their surroundings, so mommy doesn't have to hear the kid. I used to drag my sons, no, go stick your hand in the freezer and go get the frozen vegetables. They'd freeze their hands, they'd drop veggies on the floor, but you push them so that they had life skills. We don't do that anymore. That concerns me, because I promise you the Russian kids are poor and they've got life skills. Take over the house. But that's true. Yeah. And Redleg, remember, I think you and I and Lee spoke about it. Before everything popped off on the battlefield, we had the Olympics. Remember, the tail end of the Olympics is when the fighting started. And who was sitting there having dinner with his buddy in Beijing? If you don't think these two fuckers planned this out, excuse my French, back then, if they popped it off last year, they've been planning it for years now. Right. Like I said, I got to listen to Secretary Gates in Obama's second year, because Gates went from Bush and rolled over to Obama, right? He was a well-respected guy by both parties, one of the last Cold War warriors that served. And he understood the diplomacy. And he had just retired. He did a speech here in San Antonio to a conference I was in. And I was actually maybe 20 feet from the guy, really smart guy. And he said, in 10 to 15 years, so this was what, 2013? 10 to 15, he almost called it exactly. 2012, 2013, 2011, 2012, actually. He said, in 10 to 15 years, in that window, we will have a problem with Russia. And they may drag our trading competitor China into it. China doesn't like wars because it's not good in the long term of their legacy. But Russia does. And they'll drag other people. And he said this stuff back then, and I'm like, man, that's really a bold thing to say for a retired State Department guy. Like, you don't just say that lightly when you retire. And he said it openly. He said Putin and his people, and he said, if you think Vladimir's dangerous, you should see the guys in his circle. He said, I can't talk about him, but his people, oh, they're the best of the Cold Warriors on their side. So think about it. If we lose Putin, what do we get? We got the devil we know and the devil we don't. Who's the devil we don't? Something's going on. They're not going to kick him yet because he's a known quantity. But things are happening in the background, and I don't think we're being told. And I think the reason I'm bringing this out isn't to scare folks. Yeah, yeah, whether it's 10 or 20, yeah, it's been a hot minute, brother. This is not a new thing. They didn't just go have some drinks at the Olympics, say, I'm going to go invade Ukraine, Las Vidania. No, they were making final plans there. And then Putin went home and said, all right, roll them. Let's get rid of this Zelensky guy. But when they failed, what did they do? They retreated and consolidated. It's the same thing the US did when we fought China and Korea. Chinese came over the border, ran NATO out. They had one little strip at the bottom of Korea. They consolidated and fortified so they couldn't get any further. And then they counterattacked at their leisure. That's what I think we're seeing Russia do. I could be wrong. But the fact that we're not being told, oh, yeah. Right. And why would you prep think about it, Cold War Lee, why would you guys prep your gear September, October? November, December, January was the prime time for Russia to pick fights historically. And yeah, maybe February, but you were getting into the winter, so you did those 1 month drills. Everything was up to speed, restocked, resupplied, because if they were going to make a move, it was going to be in the dead of winter because they always have. And so, yeah, that what you're saying absolutely makes sense. I missed a few comments here, so if I missed you guys, I'm sorry. Yeah, participation trophies. To that point, my mother sparked. Remember when you went to an event and you sucked? All right, because I did. I went to some events, I did really good. Others, I just sucked. But I got a T-shirt and had the little logo. We were all proud of the damn T-shirt. It didn't say I won anything. They're like, "Oh, did you win?" No, I didn't win, but it was so cool. We were proud to have gotten dropped in the mud and we lost, but I'm like, yeah, but he was way faster than I was. But man, it was so much fun. Now it's like, I didn't win. I didn't get a trophy. What? God, that's what scares me. We've softened the heads of our men and women, our young men and women. And imagine a conventional war and someone, Tupolev bomber starts dropping ordnance in an American city like LA. No nukes, just bomb in the city so everyone can hear the explosions. You'll have people pass out in the street. They literally would have a heart attack. Code drawing. Last in San Antonio. Yeah. Right. And that goes to my point, who's already in. Where I'm going with all of this, guys, is the story we're being told in the media regarding what's going on in Europe. And granted, we have bigger pictures of certain very rich aristocrats in the world manipulating things, but I'm gonna not go into the bigger thing, just the battlefield stuff that we can quantify. How can you say the war's going great, Russia will be defeated, but now we have to send offensive weapons and they need more HIMARS and they need this and they need that? Why? Why now are we sending all this heavy gear? And to Lee's point earlier, he said, they would train in Europe September, October into November. That's when we sent all our gear there. Why? Because it takes that long to prepare for a winter war to get those soldiers competent. And you can't, the fact that we're not being told the truth means we don't know how to prepare. Remember, I often say, hey, you hear things in the news, don't freak, you course correct, right? You're like, oh, if this is a possibility, I need more widgets or I need more gizmos. But if you're not hearing the truth, how are you going to make those decisions? And that's why I wanted to, well, Mimi, but think about it. There are plans, right? There are stockpiles, believe it or not. A lot of people say FEMA camps. I could see in the cities they'll have a FEMA camp. In the country, they won't. They'll be drop ships because that's what we did during Harvey. The guard would roll in. The local sheriff would have a little tent area. They had volunteers and they'd unload the truck and we'd be like, boom, 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 everything out. And we were gone because, you know what, we had to go back, get more and drop at another location. In the cities, they'll have a camp because there's no open area to function in. So, and then it depends how things go. But you can't prep for everything, but remember the 80-20 rule. 80-90% of the preps you have for a hurricane can also be used for the floods, for, invasion, riots, zombies, Cloverfield monster. I still don't know what that damn thing's called. Delta. Okay, see, but you guys did the big drills because I was attached to the 10th at one point. Our big drills were in freaking winter, November, which was terrible for an undergrad guardsman because that was finals week. The end of November, between November and December, I had finals, which made me nuts. We had our 2 weeks in the summer, but we had those long weekends running around with the 10th guys up in the snow in upstate New York and the Canadian border. Right, and that's the thing. So Russia learned a painful lesson with Finland because they got arrogant about it. But look at all the wars they won. Napoleon, they defeated the Swedish kingdom, which was much bigger and better equipped. Nazi Germany's technology and training was way superior to Russia. The USSR at the time still didn't prevail. Russia prevailed. So to your point, yeah, they can take a beating. But yeah, my fear is we're doing what Russia did in Finland. Oh, we can take care of it. We'll just supply. But if it expands, do we have the capacity to handle that? And if it goes to other places in the world, how do we handle that? We don't have the manufacturing we did here that we did in the 1940s and 50s and 60s. It went away in the 70s and 80s and 90s. It just depleted away. So, yeah. And I covered that early in this live. The Stalingrad, Battle of Stalingrad. And what's sad is that Stalingrad had no value strategically. They should have gone to the Caucasus and taken over the oil fields. And that would have destroyed Russia right there. Just cut them off and then hold a defensive line. That SS unit, which was a panzer division, was more than capable of holding a massive defensive line and just beating up the Russians in the open fields down in Azerbaijan, but they didn't. And they got into this meat grinder in Stalingrad and lost the war. Yeah. There's a Marine down here who says they were very motarded. He was picking on the 10th guys. So, but yeah, no, vision, absolutely. We don't make what we used to. And now, true, we are getting a lot of valuable information, right? So on the flip side of the coin, let's talk about what Redleg says. On the flip side, China is looking at the beating Russia's frontline attack took with javelins and Gustav rockets, and they're saying, man, we go to Taiwan, that could turn ugly. It could turn into a meat grinder because Taiwan's now a fortified island. And China can take it eventually, but can they take it fast enough to stop the Seventh Fleet from raining on their parade, or the Japanese, or the Philippines, or whoever the hell else gets involved? Maybe, maybe not. But yeah, so is our tech and our equipment better? Yes. But remember in World War II, the German Panzer divisions and the Tiger tanks, the Panzer IVs, the Panther, they were way superior to the T-34 technologically. But Russia shit out like 100,000 T-34s. There was no way they could battle that. No way. That's what I'm afraid of. It's not our superior tech. It's the having enough to stop a 300,000 man army from coming across the border. But the fact that, yeah, there are a lot of variables. Yeah, Rapture. Yeah, Rapture definitely. Yeah, please share Rapture's link. Um, yeah, and if they don't do it right, they're going to take a beating, and it'll happen very quickly. True, but again, when you have large numbers, remember the T-34 was a very simple tank, and it was way over designed, right? So it's easy to learn. And you put, it was like 4-1. So, the German Panzer rolls into the battlefield and T-34s jumped on it like freaking ants. It's hard to win. So yeah, to your point, yes. If you have high competency, that makes a massive difference. But the technology and the vast numbers can also vary too. And we don't know. Like you and I, we're conjecturing, but it can hurt. My fear is uh, we're not being given a clear picture of things that are happening. And when that happens, folks like all of us cannot make informed decisions on what's going on because we don't have a clear picture. And this is why I'm bringing this up. This is not to scare the crap out of people. This is for people to understand, hey, there's something more going on. So if a conflict is possible, what's going to happen? In World War II, you had rationing, you had shortages, which we already do, but they'll get worse. Um, you could have drafts and enlistments of young men and women now, um, metal shortages, part shortages, uh, medicines will run into short supply, and that's assuming we can actually get what we need and assuming a lot of it goes to the battlefield. That's not counting facts that Russian submarines are going to have a field day on shipping everywhere, right? They're going to start torpedoing and rocketing the shit out of everyone. So, hey, no worries, Loretta. I'm glad you're able to join us. Right. And obviously, they can't tell us everything, but I don't think they're telling us anything. They're making it sound hunky dory, and I know it's not hunky dory. And that's what concerns me. Yeah. Yeah. And red leg, it may be that the Russians wanted to take the country intact. They failed to do it. So now they're like, we're just going to basically run them out. Another version of Holodomor, chase them out or kill them all. And we'll just put Russians there and it'll be Russia 2.0. They're trying to run them out. But hey, penny pinching, what's going on? Welcome. Yes, and an open battlefield with which to send MiGs and Sukhois onto you when you try to run across it. The Russians do very well in open battlefields. They've historically done very well. Yeah, and that's part of it, and that's not new, right? Wars have been fought over resources in the past, but you guys, again, when you listen to this stuff, read between the lines because they're not telling us everything, and I'm hearing stuff from people overseas what they're hearing through work and through corporate channels, and I'm like, they're not telling us this. And this can help us make better decisions going forward. So the video I was going to premiere this morning that I kicked to next week, I'm going to go a little bit more into the history. And by the way, I recorded that really tired, so I sound a little droned out. But make sure take the time to understand if shipping gets screwed up, what's going to hurt us here. And if I'm in Texas, I can still get stuff from Mexico, produce and product, right? There's a border there. That's one of the good things from USMCA is that there's trade going on, and we can get stuff from Canada. But the big cities on the coast, the New Yorks, the LAs, and like the middle country cities like Chicago and Detroit, how are they going to get product if shipping gets screwed up? Look how bad the shipping backlog after COVID screwed everyone up on availability and prices. Imagine a war doing that, because they won't just like sink ships, they'll go and attack the dock, right? You can make a ship in 6 months. You blow up Los Angeles harbor with rockets and torpedoes, it'll take you 5 years to rebuild. And we could do it to them too. But then the whole kit and caboodle is going to come apart. So I feel like I know everyone. Thanks, man. Yeah. And I know for a fact some of our American units are mobbing, even though they've just come back, are now remobbing and packing up and going to different places. I'm sure you're hearing stuff through the grapevine too. So uh, those little weird attack boats that go like 50, 60 miles an hour. Right. But will Russia wait that long? Will Russia say, you know what, screw it, we're just going to run over a few countries and then lock it down and you come fight with us? We don't know, right? There's so many scenarios, but the fact that it's escalating, it's clearly the equipment, by virtue of the equipment we're sending and the language other countries are using, it's escalating and we're not hearing anything about it. That concerns the hell out of me. That bothers me, because when you collect information, it informs your next decision. Okay, there's a thing, there's a shortage of, I don't know, batteries. Okay, so maybe now I'll pick up some batteries calmly before everyone else figures it out. But we don't know, we're not being told the whole story, so it's hard to prepare if you don't know what's going on. And I also think people are losing their minds from the stress of inflation and work and Rona and all the other stuff going on, because we've had mass shootings now of elderly shooting up other elderly, which I've never seen before. I mean, what the hell's going on? A very, very bizarre. So yeah, basically like a prepper OODA loop, and it's getting disrupted because we don't have proper information. That may not be wrong. Somebody, I think was it Orwell or Nietzsche, wrote, wars are started by the rich and powerful when they think they can profit. So yes, and that's where I'm going with this Prepper Book Club. As much of your needs as close to home as possible. Have hand tools, not just power tools. Have the first aid kit stocked up. Have your pews in order, because remember, if all the able-bodied men and women are in conflict, you may have less police, fire, rescue response locally. You will need to have to be your own first responder, even more so if something like that happens. Have food stored, so when you need something, you see it coming. You're like, oh, I have a month worth of rice. I'll start looking for more now so I have time to look for it. As opposed to what everyone did during COVID is things freaked out and everyone hit the stores at once and there was nothing there. And then people were texting each other saying, I have no food for my kids, right? Give yourself that buffer as much as you can afford. Stay on budget, but inform yourself so you can make the right choices. No, and that would be a whole nother live stream. You and I may have to do a live stream on that one, my mother's part, because this, uh, Yeah, and I think also PAMT, a lack of faith. There was a time people believed most people believed in God, or if they weren't Christian per se, they believed in Allah, Jehovah, or they believed in karma. They were Buddhists. They were trying to seek enlightenment. Now everyone's seeking medication. That song from Theory of a Dead Man, Medicate. I'm so freaking bored. Nothing to do today. All I want to do is medicate. That's our society today. And I think it's Theory of a Dead Man. There's no longer spiritual, psychological, or physical fortitude. It just doesn't exist in a lot of people. Oh, yeah. Yep. But we're looking so much at these isolated. Look, the 5 cops killed another dude. They beat him up and then he died. Throw him in jail. Done. Don't make it a big thing. They didn't do their job as cops. Everyone knows they didn't. The other cops said that's not what we do. They get thrown in jail. Done. No, it's going to get dragged out and cause riots. And while we're fighting each other here, and while the president in Canada is pissing off all the Canadians and they're clogging up his streets with trucks and honking at each other and distracting his people, we're slowly getting dragged into a conflict that will end badly for everybody overseas, and nobody's seeing it. And I think that's what I want to point out, is there's more going on than we're being told. Now's a good time. Yeah, Texas Red Leg. It's exactly where I'm going. Restage, grab and go. I actually have a get home bag and I have an assault pack. The assault pack does not serve the same purpose. The get home bag stays in my truck. It helps me get back to my house. And I can live out of it for 48 hours easy. And it's light enough that I can run with it if I have to. It's not a full, expedition bag. My assault pack is more meant for an 8-hour hitch because somebody got stranded somewhere and I have to go collect a loved one. And I may have to do that. It's made to be small. It's made to be fast. It's made to have accessories to hurt people with. And it's meant to have medical stuff for me or the person I'm trying to retrieve if they get hurt. It's not meant to stay out there. It's meant to go and get my ass back. But in any case, folks, watch this stuff. This stuff is absolutely evolving and we're not getting the whole picture. So yeah, Texas Red Leg, that was probably the best summary I could have done on this topic. So, okay, I'm sorry, the chat's skipping around on this iPad. Oh, excellent. I'm glad you did. We were going to go to the farmer's market out here, but it was like 25 degrees. And Sassy was like, yeah, no, I'm not interested in 25 degrees Saturday morning. That's just not fun. So we're going to do something. We're going to hit the range here shortly. I thought we were going to go first thing in the morning, but then I found that the range we're going to doesn't open till 11. And so I'm like 11, 12 local time. So I'm like, oh, we got time. So I'll jump on real quick. But folks, I'm going to wrap this one up. I got the other videos going to post next week. I'll go into a little more detail on some of the wars and conflicts I mentioned on this video. And yeah, just folks, take in the information and watch what's going on because we're not being told everything. So keep digging and then make an informed decision based on what you're seeing. And don't succumb to the panic and the fear mongering. There's a difference between alertness and fear mongering. Stay on the alertness side, pay attention to it and say, okay, knowing this, what can I execute? What can I do? Research, prepare, and execute that I can do that they can't, or that based on that information that other people may not be doing right now. So anyway, guys, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining me this morning. I'm going to cut you all loose so we can all go about our days. But until next time, God bless, Godspeed, keep out of trouble, and by all means, reach out if you guys have any thoughts. You guys have my email, theroamingprepper@gmail.com. And I'll see you guys next week. Thank you for joining me today. I do appreciate it. And by the way, this is my, I believe, 2-year anniversary for my channel. Go figure. It's 3 for the Instagram, but yeah, this was supposed to be a fun hobby, and now I'm kind of invested. So I'm glad I've met all of you. I knew almost everyone in the chat, which was fun, and I thank you all for joining me. This has been a wild ride, and I hope to keep doing stuff that actually helps you, hopefully, moving forward. But until next time, be safe, be careful, and I will see you later on.